have to say, this has been one of my favorite chapters, probably because we got that little anecdote about Harry smashing up his uncle and wanting to kill him. I feel like we need to really consider that Harry is mentally ill. That is an outrageous response to somebody being like, hey, you should check her background. To beat up your uncle who's in his 60s, I mean, that's low, man. Because somebody said something about your girlfriend, and then suddenly just fly into a blind rage, and you're seeing red, and you're just throwing out slurs, and then you're beating people into bloody pulps. I mean, that is not a response for somebody saying, hey, sure Meghan's the right one for you? Because even his own brother said, are you sure that this is right? But Harry's just so thick-skulled, because I remember watching an interview when he said, William told me that if I got involved with Meghan, I'd be really unhappy, and that it could be dangerous for my happiness. And I still don't know what he's talking about. It's like, you still don't know what he's talking about? You live in Montecito alone. You have no friends. You have no family. Your wife rules over you with an iron rod, and you can't figure out which part of the unhappiness William was referring to? Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Dear Denise. We're going to keep going in Entitled. And because we are already on episode 21, if you're here, you are invested in the story. You do not need me to talk on and on. I'm going to dive right in because we have like 27 pages to read today. So I got to get going. And you know I always have to stop and make my little comments along the way, which only makes everything last longer. So let's jump right back in. Now, you'll recall that the last time we read, Virginia Giuffre had just given an hour-long interview to Panorama, and she began the legal process, which would ultimately destroy the prince's career and reputation. So that's the note we left off on. This little chapter is entitled Stepping Back. The Queen maintained her public support, deliberately being photographed riding with her second son in the grounds of Windsor Castle. The Duchess posted on her Instagram account that, quote, Andrew is a true and real gentleman, and is stoically steadfast to not only his duty, but also his kindness and goodness of always seeing the best in people. I am deeply supportive and proud of this giant of a principled man that dares to put his shoulder to the wind and stand firm with his sense of honor and truth. This principled man that dares to put his shoulder to the wind? Oh my gosh. She's over there writing smut for women, so I'm not really surprised that she also continues to live in a world of delusion when it comes to her ex-husband. But, I mean, Sarah Ferguson, would you like to approach the world that the rest of us are in? She has lived in a cloud of utter delusion since the beginning of time. You don't need to come out and write these ridiculous statements about he's the most principled man you could ever hope to know. But it's like, no, he isn't. And we know that. Like, just shut up. Just don't say anything. Don't say anything. You don't have to come out and be mean about him. You know, if that's not your thing and you don't feel the necessity to distance yourself in a public way with statements, just don't say anything. But don't say these weird cover-up stories. It's like when Koo Stark was like, he's the most Christian man you could ever hope to know. It's like, I'm sorry, Koo, you must never have met any Christians. How's that for you? Anyway, the book goes on to say that it was clear that something had to be done. The 98-year-old Prince Philip summoned his son to Wood Farm at Sandringham and told him that for the sake of the monarchy, he would have to relinquish his royal duties. The official palace message read, It has become clear to me over the last few days that the circumstances relating to my former association with Jeffrey Epstein has become a major disruption to my family's work and the valuable work going on in the many organizations and charities that I'm proud to support. Therefore, I have asked Her Majesty if I may step back from public duties for the foreseeable future, and she has given her permission. It's always his idea. This is so similar to his most recent announcement about how he is no longer going to be using his titles. I erroneously said that the titles had been stripped from him. Apparently not. He's just, not going to use them. Okay. Which I'm like, well, can we strip him of the titles? Because that would be more meaningful. Just not using a thing is, you still have it technically. Anyway, but it's the same exact statement. And it's really embarrassing that we're getting a second statement that is so similar to this one. Like, it should never be that he had an opportunity to say anything close to this. Like, the first statement should have covered it all, I don't want to see this statement again. KPMG, which was paying £100,000 a year, Barclays, Bosch, and Standard Chartered withdrew their sponsorship of Pitchett Palace. BT said that it would no longer continue as a partner with the Inspiring Digital Enterprise Award. Andrew stepped down as patron of more than 230 organizations, and a visit to meet flood-hit communities in the north of England was cancelled. In December 2019, the Duke was asked to stand down from Pitchett Palace. Pitchett Palace CIC was wound down by the trustees as having no future after the Epstein scandal, and concerns about the dividing line between the Duke's charitable work and his business interests. However, he refused to give up pitch at Palace Global, which led several directors to offer their resignations. Mark Eves and Hennady Jabarov on November 19th, David Stern, who had often accompanied Andrew on his special representative visits, on December 9th, Alex Johnston on January 6, 2020, and Martin Harriman, one of his best friends from the Navy, now a telecoms entrepreneur, and Martin Dunnett, a private equity executive, on January 19th. Amanda Thirsk resigned on the 31st of March, and Johan Eliash on January 4th, 2021. Only his accountant, Arthur Lancaster, remained a director. Thirsk had been instrumental in arranging the Newsnight interview. A Prince Andrew staff member explained that Amanda was the only person Andrew listened to. Nobody else was able to get through to him. It took many weeks to talk the Duke into it, but Amanda would not back down. I remember seeing them talking one late afternoon, and Andrew broke down in tears, said the staff member. He told Amanda that he didn't like being put on the spot, and that there was absolutely no way to predict how the interview would go. In over a decade working for the Duke, the courtier had never seen him break down like this. The Queen's second son became distraught, emotional. Amanda had some sort of spell on Andrew. There's no way anyone, even the Queen, would have been able to convince Andrew to do the interview. He finally agreed after Amanda gave him a personal guarantee that the interview would be positive and would silence all his critics forever. Thirsk was forced out with a settlement that included buying her silence and helping her secure a 6-figure job with JD, China's powerful e-commerce group. It was fixed through a pitch at Palace contact, Yang Tengbo, who, as would come to light, was a crucial business contact of the prince. Now, all of us have had our questions about Amanda Thirsk, although we haven't had at-length conversation together about it, but I've had my wonderments about her. I mean, she really seems like she was pulling the strings of this marionette puppet. And you just have to ask yourself if she was just over it working for him. Because there's only so much filth and foolishness you can get up to before you know you're caught. And I wonder if she was just looking to put the knife in his back so she could scuttle away to China and continue on her nefarious ways. Everyone says she was brilliant. I mean, she was the mastermind behind this plan. You recall that yesterday we were talking and I said, who was covering for him all this time? Because clearly it wasn't himself. He's such a bumbling fool that we knew somebody had been helping him, but it was Amanda. I mean, it was Amanda time and again. And, you know, you just wonder if her throwing him under the bus was not dissimilar to when Epstein walked Andrew outside where he knew paparazzi would get a shot of them, and then he could basically show the world, Andrew's still in my pocket. And Amanda was playing him, I think, in a similar way. I think she used him up until she couldn't use any more of him. And once it looked like he was in some hot water, she arranged for him to be humiliated on a public stage. And then, you know, he could, let her go and she could scuttle away off to China, where she had many contacts thanks to Pitch at Palace, because she'd been over there making deals at Pitch at Palace too. People who came to that event said it was Amanda who was the person to talk to, not Andrew. Anyway, got to keep going. What's Fergie up to? We haven't heard about her in a minute. The Duchess had her own Chinese links. In July 2017, she had become a non-executive director of a Hong Kong-based venture capital company, Gates Ventures, chaired by an Anglo-Chinese entrepreneur, Dr. Johnny Han, which was expanding into the UK, US, and China. This directorship was now to lead to a high court action brought by Chinese investors against the company, and claims that it had been given misleading information about loans provided to Ginger and Moss, a company founded by the Duchess, and that of the £24 million raised for shareholding, 19 million had been lost. I don't know what happened to it. Dang those millions. They just kind of slip out of your fingers, don't they? A newspaper investigator revealed lavish spending at Gate, unusual transactions with offshore companies and deals involving its directors, including a loan to former boyfriend Manuel Fernandez's company, Vivush, in which the Duchess had invested. Han, who also called himself Baron of Houston, had received a doctorate in psychiatry from Hughes Hall in Cambridge in 1998. After working in banking, he established an international venture capital company, Global Group International Holdings, with a wide portfolio of interests across many sectors. He had been the executive producer for Michael Grade, who was to become another director of Gate on Sunset Boulevard, starring Glenn Close, and of the West End musical 42nd Street, and had been one of the guests at Princess Eugenie's wedding. Han said the Duchess's main role in the directorship was to introduce a few people to me in Hong Kong. According to a company statement, she was expected to oversee the group's investment portfolio in the entertainment sector and assist with identifying new entertainment projects for the group as it continues to expand. In short, to use her contacts, most importantly David Tang, and status to bring in foreign investors. Between June 2017 and October 2018, she was paid £72,000 and required to attend a minimum of 2 board meetings a year, as well as company functions. On top of director fees, she received £200,000 for, quote, marketing and promotion from an offshore bank in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 2017, allegedly relating to her role at Gate Ventures. The bank, the European Commerce Bank, chaired by another Gate director, Jeff Morrow, went into voluntary liquidation in 2019. According to an ex-worker at the bank, it did not do a single transaction the entire time she worked there. 3 months later, the Duchess received a £90,000 loan, signed off by Dr. Han for Ginger & Moss, which operated an online joint venture with Gate, though they were in completely different industries. Her spokesman said the payments, totaling £290,000, were loans from Gate Ventures to help get Ginger & Moss off the ground. But Gate Ventures was listed as a dormant company, and there was no public records of the loans. Gate Ventures CEO Jeff Morrow, a former songwriter who penned Can't Smile Without You by Barry Manilow, was also a director of Ginger & Moss. Gate Ventures lost $5.1 million in 2017 and $9.8 million in 2018. Han had a track record of employing members of the royal family to act as brand ambassadors. Peter Phillips was a paid business partner and helped Dr. Han launch a horse racing venture in Hong Kong in 2018. And his sister Zara Tyndale had been paid £100,000 a year for being a non-executive director of Han's global group between August 2016 and March 2018. At first, her lawyer described any links as wholly untrue, but admitted her role after the Mail provided documentary evidence of a £100,000 a year contract. Han gave generously to the Duke of Edinburgh's World Fellowship, but courted controversy when it was revealed that a members' club he was launching claimed to offer Christmas dinner with Prince Philip at Buckingham Palace. When challenged, Dr. Han explained the promotional material had been published in error. I'll bet. In January 2020, it was disclosed that Han had charged nearly £3 million in expenses in a 16-month period in 2017 and 2018. While the Duchess was on the board of Gate, including £4,050 for a private tour of Ground Zero in New York, £4,000 for a piano lesson, £4,000 for a 1-hour training session with the Brazilian model and actress Adriana Lima, £16,000 for a Bastille Day reception with President Macron, £6,500 for lunch with Tommy Hilfiger, £10,000 for meeting with Prince Harry at a Coldplay concert. Boy, folks are getting up to some stuff at some Coldplay concerts. And £8,000 for tea with the Duchess of York. This is not the purpose for which these small Chinese investors paid their money into the company, pointed out Judge Sebastian Parentis, who ruled Gate should be put into administration. Dr. Han stressed that all activities charged to the company were for the benefit of Gate and were legitimate business expenses, adding, "No part of the spending was for my personal benefit or personal enjoyment. It was hard, often exhausting, but necessary work." Is it necessary to spend $10,000 to meet Prince Harry at a Coldplay concert? Let me tell you, I believe it was exhausting, but was it necessary? The following questions were put to Dr. Han. How did Dr. Han meet the Duchess? How often have they met, and where and when? Does she continue to have a commercial relationship with him or one of his companies? Has he met the Duke of York? Has he or one of his companies ever had any business dealings with the Duke? On what occasion has he met their daughters? Have they been involved with him and his companies professionally or just socially? What duties did the Duchess undertake as a non-executive director of Global Group Entertainment Limited? Who did she introduce to Dr. Han? For what period did she work for the company? How much money was paid to the Duchess for her services? How much money was lent to the Duchess and how much repaid and when? When was the £90,000 loan to the Duchess repaid? In return for the £200,000 paid to the Duchess, what did the Duchess do? Or was it a loan which was repaid? Was the film in which she was an associate producer ever made? The vice president responsible for PR at Global Group International Holdings replied, "We appreciate your interest to speak with Dr. Han. However, he would like to kindly decline participation in an interview on this occasion." Perhaps for good reasons. Apart from bankrolling the royals, Han had close associations with the political cities of North Korea and China, and used royal associations to promote his business interests, first in Britain and then in America, where he now lives. Though Han was educated in Britain and has a British passport, he returned to Hong Kong to work as a private banker just as the Chinese government took control, and where he became involved with, and between 2019 and 2023, was vice chairman of the pro-Beijing New People's Party. His links with China are strong. He was a senior advisor and committee member to the Foreign Policy Research Center, China Foundation for International and Strategic Studies, and a committee member of the People's Political Consultative Conference. Court documents state that MI5 regard the CPPCC as central to China's United Front Work Department, and show the FBI had said the group enforces the rules and regulations of the Communist Party abroad. Han is an economic advisor for Jilin, the province that forms part of the border with North Korea, and the main oil pipeline between China and North Korea goes through Jilin. One of his business ventures, Global Education Group, aimed to find temporary work for the several hundred Chinese students attending British universities each year. The only people who knew the location of these students was the Chinese government, which would have had to supply Han with such lists. In turn, it would be useful for the Chinese government to know where every student was working. Han's association with North Korea goes back to the purchase of one of its banks in 2004. Impossible unless the North Koreans felt he had the blessing of Beijing. He holds an honorary doctorate of economics from the country, and between 2008 and 2012 was chairman of the International Kim Il-sung Foundation. He also established the Korean Johnny Han Education Fund, which many suspect was used to channel money out of North Korea to pay for the education of the children of the North Korean leader in the West. In 2011, Han acted as a middleman for David Rowland, who was keen to act as a banker to the family of Kim Jong-un and major state-owned industries. They also discussed investment in North Korea's gold and iron ore mines. Revenue from the mines funds its nuclear weapons program. So close were Han's ties to the ruler that the airport was kept open until 3 a.m. for his flight home. According to Clive Hamilton, a global authority on China, Han has held a number of positions and organizations at the center of the Communist Party's United Front system for exerting influence abroad. Hamilton added, members of the royal family have shown themselves to be babes in the woods when offered cash by Chinese businessmen. Don't their alarm bells ring just a bit? Dr. Han told the Mail that interactions with royal family members and any other UK public figures were entirely professional, above board, not carried out at the direction or instigation of any third party, and completely unrelated to any concept of penetrating the establishment. Me? With my ties to North Korea? Why would you suspect me? I'm as innocent as the day is long. I would never do anything untoward. I mean, yes, I have great ties to the leader of the darkest dictatorship in the world, but other than that, I'm as clean as the driven snow. Okay, let's keep going. This section is called Stepping Forward. At the end of November 2019, Sarah, who had renewed contact with John Bryan, had summoned him to a meeting at Royal Lodge, also attended by Andrew, their daughters, and their husbands, for advice on how to address the crisis. You guys will remember Bryan. We played a little soundbite from him yesterday when we were talking about how Andrew has had to retire his titles, and he's the one who was caught on a hot mic on a date by Project Veritas, in which he was saying he was so pissed off at Prince Andrew for lying to him about having all of these sexual relationships with underage girls, and that he was embarrassed because he'd done this whole thing in the Daily Mail and where he supported his friend, only to find out that his friend actually was the scumbag we all knew him to be all along. Well, John Bryan's back. The book goes on to say that Bryan remembered Andrew being so distressed he wasn't able to focus for more than 40 minutes. He said, "I was blown away by how much pain he was in." Bryan produced a 5-page strategic planning document. How are we going to recover from this and what needs to be done legally and PR-wise? But it was never implemented. He was distracted back into the system, which has often failed him and so many others, the American noted ruefully. They also discussed a mad plan, proposed by another advisor, to transform the York Chalet in Verbier, which they had bought on a £13 million mortgage, and a £5 million loan from its owner, Isabelle Deroux, in 2014. Into a private members club and charge wealthy clients £1.2 million a year with the promise that they could mingle with the royals. Can you imagine using your vacation home as a place for other people to just kind of show up and mingle with you at millions of dollars? I don't want to do that ever. I mean, ever. I could not even imagine having just a bunch of, people up in my house that I don't know. And yeah, they're paying a chunk of change, but, the opportunists that you would find at your doorstep would be innumerable. You want this? I mean, I guess in some ways it's like they're opportunists themselves. So I guess like attracts like, but gross. I would never want that. I mean, that truly is a mad plan. On the advice of barrister friend Stephen Ferguson, Andrew had created a working group of legal and PR professionals. They included Mark Gallagher, a former director of corporate affairs and chief of staff at ITV, who specialized in crisis management. Gallagher's private clients over the last 6 years had included those falsely accused of child abuse by Carl Beach, aka Nick, including former MP Harvey Proctor. The Duke had also taken on Claire Montgomery QC, the leading expert on extradition law, which had advised Augusto Pinochet, Chile's former director, and Nirav Modi, wanted for India's biggest fraud. And finally, he had sought help from Gary Bloxham, a criminal defense solicitor from Blackford's, who had defended British troops against the war crime allegations. The strategy was to fight back. The Duchess contacted journalists, encouraging them to dig into Virginia Giuffre. The Daily Mail was offered Andrew's diaries, but that backfired when it only confirmed that he was in New York at the time when Giuffre claimed he had abused her at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. It was this incident that would allow Giuffre to file her civil lawsuit in the U.S. seeking punitive damages. As a result of these revelations, Andrew's 60th birthday celebration in February 2020 was a muted affair compared to initial plans. Promotion to Admiral, a reception at Buckingham Palace, and the Union Jack flown by government buildings, with a dinner for 50 at Royal Lodge. Many invited guests shunned the event, and a second round of invitations had to be sent out. At the beginning of 2020, the Duke had issued a press statement. Of course, I am willing to help any appropriate law enforcement agency with their investigations, if required. But Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney who led the investigation in New York into Epstein and his associates, had a different memory. He spent weeks trying to engage with Andrew's lawyers, but the palace proved unhelpful. When he did finally get through to the lawyers, he faced a barrage of questions. What kind of interview will this be? Are there any protections? Is there this? Is there that? Where do you want it to take place? Berman responded, but it only led to further questions. It was an endless email exchange, and it was clear we were getting the runaround. He was not going to sit down for an interview with us, despite assuring the public that he was ready, willing, and able to cooperate. After failing to secure Andrew's voluntary cooperation, Berman sent a Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty request through the State Department, known as an MLAT. Because of our good relations with the UK and Scotland Yard, we almost always got what we asked for when we put in MLAT request. And I think that they got the same from us, but that was not what happened with Prince Andrew. We got absolutely nowhere. Were they protecting him? I assume someone was. Lisa Bloom, representing 5 of Epstein's victims, told Andrew that it was time to stop playing games and answer questions, while her mother, Gloria Allred, a lawyer for 5 more of Epstein's accusers, threatened to subpoena the Duke. She asked, if he has done nothing wrong, then why won't he talk to law enforcement? No response is the same as zero cooperation. This is ridiculous. It's just not acceptable. She organized a school bus to drive past Buckingham Palace carrying the message, if you see this man, please ask him to call the FBI to answer their questions. He implored the Duke that if you have done nothing wrong, then talk to the FBI. The Queen's lawyers, Harbottle and Lewis, who had previously acted for Andrew, were replaced with Andrew Brettler, a Hollywood attorney who had represented various celebrities accused of sexual misconduct, who now argued that Giuffre had signed away her right to sue others connected to Epstein in a 2009 settlement. A further headache for the prince was news that more than 3,000 pages of new evidence, the depositions from 29 people, including new witnesses and Epstein himself, might be unsealed within months, and this was a ticking time bomb. Epstein had paid a former lap dancer to hire girls, often homeless, runaways, or younger sisters of other strippers, to attend his parties, which were always recorded on camera. In her evidence, she said that there were rooms for sex, and girls who looked too young were kept out of sight. Epstein made it clear he wanted to make Andrew happy. I was told to make sure he was looked after, that he had a drink, and that he was okay. I saw Andrew at parties a couple of times a year, if not more. I'd flirt with him, and he would hit on me, and he was handsy. He'd stand in close proximity looking at my breasts. He would hold my hands, put his arm around my waist, stroke my cheek. He used royalty, his celebrity, to his advantage. Former Royal Protection Officer with a, quote, exemplary 23-year career in the Metropolitan Police, recalling the night Andrew first met Virginia Giuffre, said the Duke arrived by car at the front of the palace in the middle of the night and hurled abuse at the guards when they did not open the gates quickly enough. The policeman had spoken out to see justice done. The officer had applied to see his duty roster at the North Center Gate, but had been told the records had been destroyed. The Metropolitan Police had consistently refused to reveal where the Duke's bodyguards were that day because the information could put national security at risk. The officer, a member of SO-14, Scotland Yard's elite royalty protection command, in an affidavit remembered a constant stream of female visitors to the palace, including the model Caprice Barrett and Ghislaine Maxwell, who would arrive unannounced. Much of the evidence that would prove or disprove what Virginia Roberts and I are saying is held by the Metropolitan Police and its Human Resources Department and the Royal Protection Department. These include sickness records, duty rosters, annual leave, advanced security checks, palace appointment books, especially for the North Center Gate. There must be so many files. With the police, everything's written down. The policeman had informed his duty inspector about Andrew's behavior, but was told not to make a formal complaint. He said, these stories about dealings with Prince Andrew go nowhere, so just swallow it. Consequently, I made no complaint, but I never forgot about the incident. See, that would just be infuriating. to be in a position where you knew illegal activity was going on and you could report it and it could go up all the way up to the Queen and nothing would be done. It would just make you feel so impotent and weak, and it would just make you just feel like, why try? I was thinking about this the other day. Corruption at the highest levels trickles down to corruption amongst the lowest levels. And I know it's kind of like silly because we try not to believe that hierarchies exist, but they do. Even at the level of like celebrity. When you see celebrities with wild lives and just sexually ridiculous and just morally bankrupt and you look at like our leaders and our politicians who you would hope are living a certain standard of morality and decency but aren't, it just leads to like general rot in the culture because those are the people whose lives we see publicly. These are supposed to be the exalted members of society. And if these people can't conduct themselves with any decency, and there's never any justice when they don't conduct themselves with decency, it just leads to this general idea of like, well, but if they can, why can't I? No one's paying attention to me. They're on a global stage and look at the way they're acting. Why should I try so hard, little old me? I should just do whatever I want. Obviously, that's a terrible way to think, but I think it just leads to this general sort of moral lethargy of, well, but why shouldn't I just do whatever? My betters can't seem to manage it, so why should I try so hard? And I think there's a lot of people who sort of fall to that idea. And maybe they haven't even like really thought about it, but it just like it becomes part of the culture to just be a wretched, corrupt individual who's scandal ridden. And there seems to be no real consequences for it. So, try your hand at it then, All right, this section is called Mounting Evidence. Denise George, the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, remembered how an employee told me that she saw Prince Andrew on a balcony out at Little St. James groping girls right out in the open. He said he remembered walking up to him and saying, "Good morning, Your Highness." Steve Scully, who maintains the internet and phone signal at Little St. James, and said that he would repeat his allegations in court under oath, claimed he saw Andrew fooling around with a young blonde woman, who he identified as Gouffre, by the pool. He was grabbing her ass and stuff like that. They were kissing, and he was grinding against her and groping her. Jeffrey Epstein's former mentor, Stephen Hoffenberg, who had masterminded a Ponzi scheme with Epstein for which he, but not Epstein, had gone to prison, revealed how Epstein would boast that Andrew was his Super Bowl trophy. It was his strongest bond, even more than Clinton, and he planned to sell Andrew's secrets to Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad. Andrew had a weakness for the girls and fast life. Epstein provided that fantasy, said Hoffenberg. Andrew would then give intelligence that Epstein could give to Israel. This was happening when I was working with Epstein. Hoffenberg also claimed that Andrew had first met Epstein through Ghislaine Maxwell in 1991, not in 1999 as the Duke claimed. Andrew didn't understand he was being used. He's a royal, so he doesn't look at that. Andrew's story was beginning to fall apart. He had claimed that he had had a full itinerary on April 9th, 2001, when Virginia Gouffre said that she'd slept with him in New York, but an investigation by the Daily Mail showed that he had had a free afternoon after arriving by jet from London at noon. He returned from an engagement in Boston on April 11th, but while his aides flew back to Britain, he stayed on in the U.S. His next engagement was in Seoul 8 days later. Andrew insisted he had stayed with the British Consul General, Sir Thomas Harris, but the diplomat had no recollection of the prince being there, saying, "Normally I would give him a dinner party in the evening." Harris noted the absence of records of such an event, which makes me suspect that he wasn't with me that night. Andrew was now named in a federal lawsuit by Caroline Kaufman, the 17-year-old who claimed to have been raped by Epstein while the Duke was staying in December 2010. It was not looking good. No, it isn't looking good. No, it's not. Let's check in with Sarah, shall we? Sarah had now set up a new brand, Duchess Inc., a collection of bed linens, the Majestic range. Coronet pendants, scented candles add up to 40 pounds each, with their own matches, soaps, jams, pudding and cocktail herbal teas, and body and bath fragrances based on the garden at Royal Lodge, to be sold through QVC. The Duchess collection, her accessible premium range, would complement the Ginger and Moss premium brand, which now included textiles and wallpaper. I mean, this is Meghan Markle all over, isn't it? Ginger and Moss. The Duchess Incorporated. Like, this is so lame. You know, a range of goodies for you who just don't quite have enough pennies to buy from the Ginger and Moss range, but I'll figure something out for you poor people. How about a candle at 40 pounds? Could you guys scrape the pennies together for that? She had also started describing herself on LinkedIn as a global humanitarian, businesswoman, best-selling children's book author, producer, and wellness advocate. In February 2020, she announced she had signed a deal for 7 children's books with Serenity Press. In all, they would publish 13 books from her under the Duchess Serenity collection, with 20% of sales going on to her new charity, Sarah's Trust. She had forged a commercial partnership with Montegrappa, an Italian manufacturer of luxury goods, to bring out a new range of fountain pens, with her personal monogram engraved on an 18-karat gold nib, and retailing at 1,742 pounds. Who wants that? What market is this for? Who's like, you know what I really need in my fountain pen collection? A nib with somebody else's monogram on it. Who's that somebody else? Sarah Ferguson. Can't wait to get her monogrammed nib. 18-karat gold at 1,742 pounds. Can't wait to spend that money. Hilariously, from each sale, she took a royalty, part of which was given to another of her charities, Street Child. What kind of name is that? Street Child? Come on, Sarah. That's probably not the best name for a charity, is it? When she's sitting around in a board meeting, we've got to come up with a new name for this charity. What do you guys think it should be? What about Dirty Street Urchin? Well, let's not go so far. What about we just call it Street Child? How about that? During the COVID lockdown, the Duchess had also launched a storytelling series for children on YouTube called Storytime with Fergie and Friends, in which she read stories by well-known writers.
Storytime with Fergie and Friends.
Ooh, it's so exciting. We've got palm trees, we've got flamingos, and we've got ostriches. And we've got sunshine and octopuses and fruit and delicious yummy things. And it's Fergie and Francis story time, and it's great to see you. Here we go.
It became a cult hit as she flapped around in a floral garland headband imitating donkey noises, wearing a blonde plaited wig to read Goldilocks and the Three Bears. A friend joined her dressed as a bear, and taking on all the voices for any character in the book she read aloud. Was it Andrew? I bet his greatest wish would be dressed up as a teddy bear. She also used her new social media platform to give advice on making fun sandwiches and biscuits. A classic was making Budgie the Vecacopter with carrots and an avocado, helped by friends such as broadcaster Stephen Fry, singer Peter Andre, and her 2 daughters. As one newspaper put it, the pandemic has seen the mother of 2 reinvent herself as an off-the-wall Jackanory host. Whackanory, if you will. In June 2020, the Duchess launched her new charitable foundation. I guess Street Child wasn't good enough. And she announced this through Hello Magazine and called it Sarah's Trust. Its mission statement, according to Companies House, was to introduce philanthropists to causes that need funding and support to create impactful and sustainable change. Its first project was to deliver meals, snacks, and hygiene items to key NHS workers. Some 150,000 care packages, which ranged from surgical scrubs to Scotch eggs, were sent to over 80 locations. Working with the homeless charities Under One Sky and NOAA, it provided 500 kit bags of sleeping bag, food, toothpaste, and sanitary pads to homeless people sleeping rough in London and Luton. In Ghana, in partnership with the charity Humanitas, it supplied water tanks to an orphanage with 100 children. She launched Brew for the Crew, 80 English tea bags and 4 packets of salted caramel and chocolate chip biscuits, branded Duchess, sold for £35 or £20 for just the tea bags, with profits going to the charity. Other items included a cotton children's face mask featuring the Budgie the Helicopter children's book character, costing £12. I mean, did you think this is like 1989? Who still has anything to do with Budgie the Helicopter? I mean, in this day and age, 2020, she's trying to sell this. Does anybody read Budgie the Helicopter books to their kids? I've never even one time been like, you know what, we're really missing from our children's book collection. Who did she think was going to buy this cotton children's face mask so they can run around like Budgie the Helicopter? It was also announced that the Duchess would appear as a judge on Dancing with Horses, in which celebrities would work with the animals to create dance sequences. I'm sorry. That is a bottom-of-the-barrel idea. The show was the brainchild of Claudia Rosencrantz, who had made her reputation commissioning The X Factor, Love Island, and Britain's Got Talent, and described it as like Dancing with the Stars, but your partner is a horse. They shot a pilot. The Duchess was passionate and professional, according to Rosencrantz. But coming in the middle of COVID, the series was never made. I don't think COVID was the reason the series wasn't made. You want to talk about losing it. You have truly run out of ideas. When your big idea is Dancing with the Stars, but your partner is a horse, my question is, how many people can you think of who would be capable of producing any kind of dance sequence with an animal? Maybe Hilaria Baldwin could find success on Dancing with the Horse. Okay, let's keep going. COVID had also provided an opportunity to try to rehabilitate Andrew, who was pictured in 2020 on his ex-wife's Instagram account delivering cupcakes to Thames Hospice in a private act of charity. But he was never far from another scandal. The following month, it was reported that the Prince Andrew Charitable Trust had come under investigation by the Charity Commission regarding £355,297 of payments over a 5-year period to his former private secretary, Amanda Thirsk, who was a trustee of the charity. Charity law prevents trustees benefiting from a charity. The money was repaid to the trust, which was then closed. The same month, it came to light that Andrew and his former wife were also being sued by a former close friend, Isabelle Derouve, for $6.7 million, still owed for their ski chalet in Verbier, bought from her in a private sale. The payment had been due by the end of 2019. Derouve had previously rented out the 7-bedroom chalet with 6 full-time staff for £22,000 a week, and the Yorks had been regular renters. After the sale, they had divided the property, with Andrew taking the upper floor and attic and Sarah the lower and basement. The Duke and Duchess would subsequently sell the chalet, reputedly for $19 million. Derouve described dealing with Andrew as a horrible experience. I do not understand how he operates, and I feel very sorry for people who are involved with him in business. The serialization and then publication of a new biography, Prince Andrew, The End of the Monarchy and Epstein, later updated as Prince Andrew, Epstein, Maxwell, and the Palace, by Nigel Cawthorne, added to the Duke's woes. A petition to the Queen signed by 1,500 people that his title Earl of Inverness should be removed was ignored. The Balmoral gift shop stopped selling postcards of him. I'm afraid he is very much on the naughty step, a sales associate told The Sun. The war of the words between Andrew's lawyers and the American prosecutors continued throughout the summer of 2020, with Blackford alleging that the U.S. Department of Justice had rejected 3 offers of help by the prince, and Geoffrey Berman publicly accusing Andrew of trying to falsely portray himself to the public as eager and willing to cooperate, and saying a request to schedule an interview had been repeatedly declined. If Prince Andrew is, in fact, serious about cooperating with the ongoing federal investigation, our doors remain open, and we await word of when we should expect him. In August, an ex-model, Lisa Phillips, told a documentary series, Surviving Jeffrey Epstein, that she had confronted Epstein after a friend, then in her early 20s, had been told to sleep with Andrew. He replied, "It's nice to have things on people." The girl, Sarah, a blonde from Minneapolis, had slept with Andrew about the same time as Gouffre. Epstein later set her up in the art world. The Royal Thames Yacht Club now replaced the Duke as Commodore with the Duchess of Cambridge. Jennifer Arcary had regularly seen him at the club. He often brought girls there because it was private, she said. It was a side everyone knew and they rolled their eyes. That's Andy. He was quite creepy. In December 2020, the Daily Mail published an investigation into the occasions Virginia Gouffre had claimed she had slept with the Duke. The confidential, and until then unpublished, itinerary of Andrew's visit on April 9, 2001, when Gouffre said she'd slept with him a second time at Epstein's mansion, revealed he had private time from 2:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Neither of his 2 Scotland Yard bodyguards nor his equerry were able to explain what he did during this period. The flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein's jet showed that Epstein, Gouffre, a teenage girl called Banu, and a young woman, Joanna, later identified as Johanna Sjoberg, arrived that day at Teterboro Airport, some 15 miles from Epstein's house. This was the episode during which Sjoberg, under oath, said that she sat on Andrew's knee and he placed his hand on her breast. In spite of Andrew's denial during the Newsnight interview, he in fact did return from Boston to New York on the night of April 11th to stay with Epstein at his gigantic Manhattan townhouse on the Upper East Side, before ostensibly flying on to the Bahamas the next day for a holiday with his ex-wife and daughters. One of the 2 accompanying PPOs told the Mail that he stayed in the townhouse in his usual guest bedroom on the 4th floor, a revealing comment in itself. A footnote says that Andrew stayed so often he was given his own suite on the 3rd floor called the Britannica Suite. Abandoning long-standing official travel arrangements involving Buckingham Palace, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and the Metropolitan Police, and accompanied by his protection officer, Andrew delayed his family holiday to follow Epstein to Little St. James for 48 hours, described by one eyewitness as a weekend-long party. Gouffre, Ghislaine Maxwell, and another young female masseuse that Andrew had met in New York and had flown ahead of the Duke. Andrew and his PPO finally joined his family 3 days late on Easter Sunday, April 15th. Can you imagine having an opportunity to spend some time with your kids in the Bahamas and you're 3 days late because you're too busy partying on Jeffrey Epstein's island? I mean, the just disgusting, debased nature of that. Just kind of being like, I guess I'll get to my family when I get to my family. I mean, like, yuck. I mean, I shouldn't even joke about it. It's so horrifying. It's like, really and truly, I mean, you know, I do laugh a good bit in this book, and we're coming up to a rip-roaring portion in just a second, but it really is like such a tragic story. It really is. And I mean, I don't need to tell you that. You're listening to it. You know it's tragic. It's just, you know, we just, like I said before, this book is so crazy that I feel like we're getting to the point where we're almost like desensitized to how crazy it is. That's insane. That a British prince delayed his family vacation by 3 days because he was too busy having illegal sex on the island with a well-known global sex predator. I mean, that's an insane storyline. If that's the only thing we ever heard about him, that would be insane. All right, this section is called Reputational Damage. In January 2021, the royal family had a summit, and Andrew's siblings agreed that there was no way back for him because of the reputational damage he was causing the monarchy and his ungracious and ungrateful attitude. After Meghan Markle was accused of bullying staff, Buckingham Palace braced itself for historic complaints about the Duke's bullying, profanities, and impossible demands. A former aide had been reduced to tears after being bawled at in a phone call before dawn because Andrew was unhappy with a story in the Sun newspaper. One member of staff was moved to other duties because Andrew disliked a mole on the man's face, and another because the man was wearing a nylon tie. The report on Markle has never been released. Some say because it would also raise questions about the behavior of the Queen's second son. And I'm inclined to believe it, because I've always wondered, why are they protecting Meghan Markle the way they are? She's got nothing on them. She is roundly disliked by everybody in the royal family, everybody in England. I mean, nobody can stand her. And why would anybody protect her? I mean, wouldn't they want to prove that she was such a nightmare? And I've always wondered, like, what are they afraid would happen if the report came out? But this makes so much sense because Andrew's been a notorious bully of the people at the palace. So if they highlight Meghan's behavior, it's going to be really obvious that they don't highlight Andrew's. And then that's going to be like, why are they covering up for Andrew? Why have they always covered up for Andrew? Let's talk about all the things we have to cover up for Andrew. That's just going to bring more scrutiny to Andrew. So they have to just ignore Meghan in order to be able to keep ignoring Andrew. That's the problem, you guys. Stop ignoring the stuff, you know? Don't ignore the Meghan and don't ignore the Prince Andrew. Don't let these people act this way. And, you know, it is a little bit rich when you consider the fact that so many people came to Meghan and said, you can't talk to people like that. Well done, yes. But also, why did nobody take Andrew aside for all the years of his life and say, what are you doing running your mouth at the poor people that we pay? Leave them alone. They've not done anything to you. They've just trying to get along with their life. It's not that guy's fault he's got a mole on his face, and God forbid that this man doesn't have enough money to buy a silk tie to wear a nylon tie. I mean, my gosh, can you imagine? It's ridiculous that it's like, well, we can't hold Meghan to account because we're not willing to hold Andrew to account, so I guess no one gets held to account. But you guys sit down, because this is a little story I had never heard. If you guys have heard this, how come none of y'all told me this? This is amazing. Andrew's relationship with Charles' two sons was also a problem. At a family gathering in the autumn of 2013, Harry and Andrew had got into a heated argument and punches were thrown over something that Andrew had said behind Harry's back. According to a source close to both men, Harry told him that he was a coward not to say it to his face. They wanted to kill each other. Harry got the better of Andrew by all accounts, leaving him with a bloody nose before the fight was broken up. I mean, what? Harry didn't write about that in his autobiography, did he? Kind of skipped the part when he beat up his elderly uncle. I mean, yeah, his uncle is Prince Andrew, so, like, finally somebody beat that guy up. But, like, seriously, that's crazy behavior. Like, you can strongly dislike somebody, but, like, don't beat up an old person. You know what I mean? Like, Harry is, you know, young in the prime of his life at the time, and he's gonna, like, beat up on a 6-year-old uncle? Like, dude, no. And you know what it was about? Comments about Meghan. Andrew later told Harry that he did not believe his marriage would last more than a month. According to the same source, the Duke accused his nephew of going bonkers and not doing any due diligence into her past. He openly accused Meghan of being an opportunist and thought she was too old for Harry, and that his nephew was making the biggest mistake ever. Well, welcome to the table, Andrew. Take a seat. For once you've said something that we can all agree on. Harry later told William he was planning to kill his Uncle Andrew. He hated him that much. Okay, can we just take a minute to just soak in what we have just heard? As we have suspected for a very long time, Andrew and Meghan had run across each other before. There's lots of talk that Meghan, at a certain point in her life, was kind of making her rounds amongst the elite and was kind of a yacht girl, and that she had run into Andrew before. And that was why it was so weird and lame when she pretended she didn't know who Andrew was upon first meeting him, because her dumbfoundedness read as an unbelievably awkward attempt to hide her initial recognition of him. Who's that guy with your grandma? Is he like her special aide or something? Like, how do you not know who Prince Andrew is, you know? So that was like super weird that she said that. All right, so we've long since established that Andrew identified her from the get-go. So it makes sense why he's wanting to steer his nephew away from somebody who he would consider a contaminated individual, because he's seen this girl live in the wildlife. He participated in it with her, but I don't think that's what he wants for his nephew. So he's talking about Harry behind Harry's back. Harry gets wind of this, and so he decides that the next time he sees his uncle, it's going to need to be a physical altercation. They start screaming at each other, and then he starts slamming his uncle in the face until he has drawn blood. And then he's separated from his uncle. And then he tells his brother, I'm going to kill him. And it's all because Andrew says to him, you really need to do your due diligence about that girl. You need to look into her background. You need to find out who she really is and where she's really been. Because I think she's just shown up because she wants to cozy up to the royal family and she's using you. And if crazy naive Andrew finally has the sense to see that, oh, it's a possibility that nefarious forces will use you if you happen to be a really dumb prince. If even Andrew can clock that Meghan's up to no good, can you imagine how clunky she was in her general demeanor around the family? If even simpleton Andrew was like, I think that girl's trying to take advantage of you, because he hasn't been able to tell when anyone was taking advantage of him. And why do you think he would know that Meghan was trying to take advantage of Harry, since he is so incapable of reading character? Because he'd already been with her. Because he'd already slept with her. Now, some of it is alleged. I mean, we don't really know that for a fact. I don't have a document or a picture of the fact that Meghan was, kind of running through the ranks and, being a little bit of a playgirl before she met Harry. That is what the gossip mill says. But it would make sense if for somebody who never seemed to be able to tell when people are taking advantage of him was suddenly very aware that Meghan Markle was trying to take advantage of Harry. Well, he didn't appreciate it. And he goes to William and says, I'm going to kill him. According to the same source, the relationship with William is not much better. There have been tensions between the two men for years, partly occasioned by Andrew being rude about Kate, and William has long worked behind the scenes to evict his uncle from Royal Lodge. He thinks Andy is abusing the property and his privilege there. He also loathes Sarah Ferguson. He can't wait for the day when Charles throws them both out. If Charles doesn't, I guarantee you the first thing William does when he eventually becomes king is to get them evicted. William refers to Andy as a tosser. Perhaps not as bad as the vile names his brother Harry uses. Harry has referred to Andrew as a poofta, an arsehole, and a twit. I mean, so many parties are so right about so many things in this little chapter, aren't they? All right, let's keep talking about Sarah, shall we? In July, Sarah finally published her first novel, Her Heart for a Compass, inspired by the life of her red-headed great-great-aunt, Lady Margaret Montague Douglas Scott. In January 2005, it had been reported that rights had been sold in the novel, then called Heartmore, for $1.9 million, and that it was going to be turned into a major Hollywood film, though at that point she had not written a word. It was said her assistant, Johnny O'Sullivan, was touting a script of her life to directors such as Gorinda Chatta, with Julianne Moore moody to play her. To date, no film has been announced. The book was co-written by Mills and Boone stalwart, Marguerite Kay, after a succession of ghosts failed to make the grade, with the Duchess keen to stress that every single line came from my own heart, and I'm very much a director rather than an actual scribe. It was endorsed by Jeffrey Archer as a compelling story of a young woman who rebels against the restrictive Victorian conventions of her time to find self-fulfillment in love. Could somebody just tell me a story about a Victorian who was like okay with the conventions of the time? Like every single book about a woman always has to have her rebelling against life. Is there any stories about people who are like, you know what? I'm generally pretty good with what's going on. You know, it's just like, I can't stand these restrictive corsets. I'm going to go around with my breasts flapping. I just can't stand how only boys get to wear pants. I'm going to wear these hideous bloomers. I just can't stand the fact that boys get to do everything that girls don't, like digging ditches and sweating all night on a railroad. It's like, or was there any woman who's like, hey, I'm really glad that a man's providing for me and I can watch my kids and cook a bunch of great meals and like live a normal life. Like if you really want to go sweat on a railroad and dig a ditch or whatever, more power to you, you can do that. But like, is there ever going to be a story in which like there's always going to be this rebel, it's always going to be this person who like hates corsets? It's just like, what an unoriginal idea, you know? Anyway, the critics were less generous, even with the contribution of an established ghostwriter. According to Jan Moore in The Mail, it was Ferguson's 77th book, itself something of a miracle. Every time you think the Duchess has emptied her emotional tank and can admit no more, she comes roaring back a few years later, engines ablaze with a fresh confession and renewed plea for atonement, redemption, and forgiveness. In her autobiography, My Story, published in 1996, the Duchess had been a single mother with few assets and less income than most presumed. 7 years later, in What I Know Now, she explained, I do not merely rise above old wrongs, I deny them their reality. We know. While in 2011's Finding Sarah, she had admitted, I was broken and lost, not even sure where I was, but out of this emotional barrenness, I knew I had to find me. The question the columnist now posed was, has she found herself at last? Talking about the book, the Duchess admitted she spoke to her therapist on a weekly basis. I did have and still have mental health issues, which I work on literally every day. I really do. And I've been in therapy for 24 years. I don't think the therapy's working. Journalist Henry Mance, interviewing her, remarked on her ability to talk about her true self while also seeming to play a part. The Duchess told Mance, if you say, what's the one thing about me? Apart from being a great mother, I'll own that. I love thinking. I love it. Thoughtfulness is my middle name. What? The one thing that people need to know about her is that she loves thinking. Was she thinking when she ordered half a side of beef, a leg of lamb, and a chicken and ate a bag of crisps instead? Was she thinking when she sold on her husband's royalty and tried to milk that for all it's worth? Was she thinking when she let her little baby girl sit on the knee of her lover? Was she thinking when, as a pregnant woman, she was having an affair with John Bryan? Was she thinking when she allowed her daughters to visit with and have Epstein over to their weddings and to their birthday parties? Was she thinking when she said, my favorite thing to do is think? What about this line, I do not merely rise above old wrongs, I deny them their reality? That is true. She is delusional. And what an insight, quite frankly. I just pretend that my life isn't what it is and I just keep on going. That's the only way she could keep going. Anyway, the book goes on to say that when the journalist Henry Mance asked her about the Newsnight interview, her mood changed. Drop it, Henry, drop it. I'm legally not allowed to. The atmosphere is now cooler than the pink champagne. Suddenly I realize how fragile Fergie is, how supporting Andrew is not an act of foolishness, so much as the rational response to a lifetime of loss. As she left their 3-hour lunch, she showered him with books, a toy corgi, and candles. Looking down, he noticed her embroidered slippers. One foot read, never explain. The other, never complain. This last section is entitled, The Lawsuit. On August 9th, 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a 15-page lawsuit for sexual misconduct against Andrew under New York's Child Victims Act, accusing him of sexual assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Her lawyer, David Boies, gave lengthy interviews to BBC Newsnight, Channel 4 News, and the main U.S. news networks. The problem was not going to go away just because the Duke and his legal team ignored it. The next day, Andrew and his ex-wife made the 500-mile trip to Balmoral in 3 SUV vehicles. A new petrol Land Rover Defender costing £53,000, a Land Rover Discovery priced at £51,185, and a Range Rover Petro-Electric Hybrid, £115,000, for a 10-day stay that became 3 weeks, continuing after Beatrice, who had married in a low-key ceremony the previous July, gave birth to her first child, Sienna. Now, here's a little note about the low-key ceremony that Beatrice had to have on account of the fact that her father was such a wretch. It says here the marriage had originally been planned for the Chapel Royal, with a reception at Buckingham Palace, but, because of the scandal surrounding her father, instead took place at the Royal Chapel of All Saints in the grounds of Royal Lodge, with only 20 guests and Andrew absent from any of the released wedding photos. What a devastating reality that your dad is such a scumbag, that your wedding has to be altered and he doesn't even really get to be in any of the pictures, because we can't have that. What, she's had a lifetime of him not coming to birthdays or coming late to family vacations because he's too busy partying with underage girls, but at the same time, you would still think, it's my dad. I really wish that he could have been a part of the ceremony in a normal way. Legal papers were served at Royal Lodge by Caesar Augusto Sepulveda, a partner in a London-based intelligence company, but the security staff refused to accept them. Papers were also posted and sent to the Duke's lawyers, who continued to argue that they had not been properly served. Instead, his lawyers initiated a motion for dismissal that Giuffre's lawsuit was baseless, that she had already settled her sex trafficking and sexual abuse claims against Epstein in 2009, and in exchange for $500,000, Giuffre had indemnified any and all persons who Giuffre identified as potential targets of future lawsuits, regardless of the merit or lack thereof. Bowies accused the Duke's legal team of stonewalling and said that Andrew was not and could not have been a party to that agreement, the existence of which he had only just learned. Lisa Bloom, by now representing 8 of Epstein's victims, agreed. I think Prince Andrew is trying to dodge and hide and duck service, which is not a good look for him. Various reputation management experts offered advice. Alison Stewart Allen thought that he should apologize, go into psychotherapy to overcome the trauma caused by his association with Epstein, and devote himself to charity work in Africa. The lawyer Mark Stevens felt that he was caught between a rock and a hard place. If he gives an interview, like he did with Emily Maitlis, he's condemned out of his own mouth. If he stays silent, he's damned by his own silence. So neither is a good option. Stevens believed that talking about his private life might be even more damaging than this kind of Neverland opprobrium. His best bet was just to sit tight. On September 21st, the Duke's legal team finally accepted the service of legal papers and said he intended to come out fighting and repudiate Giuffre's accusations point by point, claim by claim. They accused her of bringing the lawsuit to achieve another payday at his expense. A deadline of July 14th, 2022, to complete depositions was set, with a preliminary hearing in Manhattan fixed for October 13th. In July 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell had been arrested by the FBI in her secluded mansion in New Hampshire from GPS positioning on her phone, registered under the name G-Max, after she had called her sister, new husband, and lawyers. She pleaded not guilty to charges of trafficking minors for Jeffrey Epstein and was denied bail. In November, her trial had begun, and a month later, Maxwell was found guilty of 5 of the 6 charges laid against her and sentenced to 20 years in prison. It was a stark reminder of what lay in store for others who might be indicted. The big question also was, what might she now tell the authorities to reduce her sentence? At the beginning of 2022, the $500,000 Epstein settlement was unsealed. There was no mention of Andrew, and the judge ruled it was not relevant. He also rejected an attempt by the prince's legal team to throw out the case on technical grounds because Giuffre no longer lived in the United States. Andrew was forced to admit to the court that he had no evidence to support his assertion that he could not sweat. Buckingham Palace began to distance itself from the embroiled Duke, and in a sign that the initiative was now with Prince Charles and Prince William, briefed that the Queen would no longer bankroll Andrew's legal fees. According to a senior former royal advisor, the Andrew problem was a long-running issue for the royal household in general. A former Buckingham Palace staff member recalled the Duke refusing to take any advice and staff being too scared to stand up to him, the Queen's second son. Her Majesty always backed him, and he fully exploited that. There's an element of Buckingham Palace sleepwalking into this whole crisis. Andrew would tell his family that it was all untrue, and it would all go away. Though his ex-wife and daughters with their husbands had gone skiing in Verbier, Andrew remained at Royal Lodge in discussions with his legal team. He faced an agonizing decision to end the case by agreeing a financial settlement, which the court of public opinion would view as an admission of guilt, or continue to fight with the prospect of a potentially damaging trial and further disgrace. His answer came soon enough. On January 12th, Judge Kaplan denied Andrew's appeal. The case would go to trial. The next day, the Queen received an open letter from 150 veterans, organized by Republic, asking her to strip Andrew of his honorary military roles, and, if necessary, that he be dishonorably discharged. These steps could have been taken at any time in the past 11 years. Please do not leave it any longer. The response was swift. Buckingham Palace issued a statement. With the Queen's approval and agreement, the Duke of York's military affiliation and royal patronages have been returned to the Queen. The Duke of York will continue not to undertake any public duties and is defending this case as a private citizen. From now on, Andrew was on his own. Now, a footnote says, though she had finally given way to public opinion, her son remained Duke of York and Earl of Inverness, much to the irritation of local residents, and it was said, to cheer him up, a vice admiral in the Royal Navy. Okay, well, not right now. So, of course, that footnote is now outdated because he isn't currently those things. He can't use them anymore. But at the time of this book, when she took away his military honors, he was still able to retain his other titles. So, step by step, drip by drip, he's finally being set in his place. You guys, that's all we have time to read for today. I have to say, this has been one of my favorite chapters, probably because we got that little anecdote about Harry smashing up his uncle and wanting to kill him. I feel like we need to really consider that Harry is mentally ill. That is an outrageous response to somebody being like, hey, you should check her background. Now, of course, he probably felt that his uncle had no right to tell him to, like, check the morality of others because, it is Andrew. But to, come to blows about it at the age that he is at, to beat up your uncle who's in his 60s, I mean, that's low, man. It isn't as though Andrew walked in and Andrew was trying to hurt, one of his kids or something like that. That's a reason to come to blows. But because somebody said something about your girlfriend and then suddenly just fly into a blind rage and you're seeing red and you're just throwing out slurs and then you're beating people into bloody pulps. I mean, that is not a response for somebody saying, hey, sure Meghan's the right one for you? Because even his own brother said, are you sure that this is right? But Harry's just so thick-skulled, because I remember watching an interview when he said, well, William told me that if I got involved with Meghan, I'd be really unhappy and that it could be dangerous for my happiness. And I still don't know what he's talking about. It's like, you still don't know what he's talking about? You live in Montecito alone. You have no friends. You have no family. Your wife rules over you with an iron rod, and you can't figure out which part of the unhappiness William was referring to? I mean, to be a fly on the wall of Balmoral, let me tell you, that big drama up in this place. Never have I ever, at any family gathering, has there been folks coming to blows, beating each other in the face over something as small. Never has that ever happened. But certainly I've never witnessed a disagreement on that level because somebody said, I really think you should look at the background of your girlfriend. Don't get on Harry's bad side. He's a ticking time bomb, quite frankly. I think the thing that's so crazy is he has real rage. Like real rage. That's out of control, like bottled up, unbelievable anger, angst, indignation, and rage. Wrathful. And we're supposed to believe he's never going to react like that to, his kids, his wife, the people who work for him. I mean, what a way to behave. Just like a complete and total rabid animal. Shocking. All right. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow for more of the same. We're almost done with this book. We have 2 more. I have ordered the Virginia Giuffre book. So I'm thinking that when we're done with this book, it would be a good idea to read that one so we can see her side of the story. All right. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.